Well, as I mentioned before, we have on the line for you tonight the very first National Elvis Presley Fan Club president, his former girlfriend, and so much more. Queen of the Rock and Bop, the fabulous Kay Wheeler. Kay, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Oh, my. I may not be able to speak after that introduction.
Well, I know you get asked this question a lot. The very first question that opens everything up. How did the Elvis Fan Club come about?
The Elvis Fan Club was like everything exciting with Elvis. It was out of the box. It was not like you would normally sit down in a circle and say, let's start a fan club. It was more like a happening. And that's what makes it all so much fun. A long story short, my aunt was the assistant to the top executive that owned radio station KLIF in Dallas. And they figure into my story very big in a later time. But anyway, I had already kind of heard of Elvis Presley and heard him on the Big D Jamboree there in Dallas. You know, he was just a ragtag country singer guy, you know, one of the guys on the bill. I had heard him sing Mystery Train one night over the radio, but I didn't know what he looked like or anything. But I knew that I had heard something that wasn't like anything that I'd ever heard before. Even though I was into black rock and roll with the Hank Ballard and the Midnighters, and you know, Fats Domino and the Clovers and some of the great groups, we were already bopping, and teenagers at that time had already gotten into rock and roll in a very underground way. But when I heard Mystery Train that night, I was looking for a black radio station, accidentally hit the Big D Jamboree. They said, this is Elvis Presley. And I thought, what a strange name. But listen to that music. It was like somebody just picked you up and took you on a trip. And my eyes just was just so wide open. My sister was there with me. We just stared at the radio like, what is that? And so, you know, we didn't really think anything about it. We're 16-year-old kids, you know, she's 2 years younger. We're just young teenagers. And so a little later, I was at a record shop, and I looked over to a poster, and there was a poster advertising Mystery Train. It was a yellow poster, and it showed this unbelievably good-looking guy leaning back singing. It said Elvis Presley, and I thought, oh, no, it can't sound like that, look like that at the same time. You know? That's not fair. And, you know.
Guys have been trying to do it ever since without success.
I know. I thought, hey, this is double trouble if there ever was. And, you know, it was just a little poster piece of paper, so I just took the paper, folded it up, and put it in my books. We were on the way to school. And so I was just amazed at it. I just couldn't believe it. And so then later on that week or shortly thereafter in study hall, that my friend was talking about, she said, have you heard about this guy down in Gladewater? He's like, you know, shaking his leg. He's like the best looking thing you've ever heard in your life, and all that. It was a buzz going over Texas, okay? It was a teenage buzz that was kind of like, we didn't have Facebook or the internet, but we just was kid to kid, teen to teen. And she said, and his name is Elvis Presley. And I'm thinking, I've got his poster in my book here, and I've heard him on the Big D Jamboree, and I thought, and then my eyes even got bigger than ever. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, one Saturday, sometimes my Aunt Billy would take us kids, and when she was working on Saturday, she'd let me come along or tag along, me and my sister, and we'd just kind of go and play around the radio station. She was just a great auntie. And so this disc jockey comes in her office, and he says, you won't believe what we got in today. We got this record by this guy. And guess what his name is? Elvis Presley. He leaned back and laughed, and my eyes just got huge. I said, Elvis Presley? And he says, you can't, what? He says, that's the corniest name anybody had. Nobody will ever get anywhere with that name. And he was just talking to my aunt there, and I was just sitting there listening. And I said, oh, he's going to be a huge star. Don't worry about that. And before I knew what I was saying, I said, I have a fan club anyway, you know, so he's going to be a big star. Like, in my mind, that was going to do the trick right there. It was me and my sisters. We were, and a few other friends, we were already freaking out over it, so that was good enough for me. I said, we have a fan club. So, unknown to me, he gets my address from my aunt, and as a gag on his show that Saturday night, his name was Bruce Hayes, he announced and played the record, if you want to join the Elvis Presley fan club, write Kay Wheeler, and, gave the address over the air. And so, okay, I didn't know he did it. It was a gag. It was like a gag. Mm-hmm. But the station was throughout all of Texas. It was a big radio station. It wasn't just local. And so Monday, somehow I didn't go to school that day. Whatever, I was good at that. Anyway, my mother comes running into me, and she says, there's stacks of mail all over the front porch of our house. I said, what? And she says, and it's all addressed to you.
It's all addressed to you.
It's all addressed to you. And I said, what? I mean, it was like, what? It was like a saucer landed in the front yard or something, flying saucer. I said, well, what is it? And I'll go out there, and all these stacks and stacks of boxes of wrapped in string, stacks of letters, and we bring them all in the family room, we sit them down, and we start opening them up, and they all say, we heard the announcement about your fan club on the Bruce Hayes show.
Wow.
Please send us a card. Please send us a card. Please send us a picture. And, of course, I just thought, what is this? And, it was the freakiest thing ever. There was hundreds of them, literally hundreds of them. And so I told my mother, I said, what's a fan club? And she said, well, I remember when I was growing up in Frank Sinatra, the fan club, they had fan clubs for him all the time. And she said they got to sometimes get to meet him. I said, oh, I see. That sounds good. That sounds right. And so I said, well, it's a fan club, so I've got to they wanted cards, they wanted a photo. And so I went back and found a little poster that I'd taken from the record shop, and it had an address on there, Bob Neal in Memphis. And so I wrote a letter, and I said, I have a fan club. I said, do you have cards? Do you have pictures? I was 16 years old, so I'm not thinking I can design and print a card. I'm not thinking like that at all. That's totally, off the table. And so I heard nothing back. So a short time thereafter, maybe a week, 3 or 4 weeks, I received a letter from a Colonel Parker's office, with a great big wagon on the letterhead, and, we cover the nation, Colonel Tom Parker. And I thought, what is that? And apparently his secretary, Carolyn Asmus, wrote and said, your letter was forwarded to us by Bob Neal, and we just want to let you know that we do not have any fan club facilities for Elvis. And you can do anything you want, and we do appreciate all your efforts for Elvis, but Elvis is just one of the Colonel's smaller attractions. His main attraction is Hank Snow and blah, 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 Carter, and so forth. So you can do anything you want with an Elvis Presley fan club. And I thought, oh, well, what do I do? It's the first thing I thought, well, they want cards. So what's a card? I had to do, all of a sudden I was a graphic designer, at 16. Oh. And so I came up with those Presley pink cards, the Presley pink, and, I went for the, you're the loyal member of the coolest class in the Elvis Presley fan club. Elvis is our cause. Wow, what a cause. And, actually, Graceland reproduced that card and put it in their Elvis box of collectibles, like his first report card, his first check from the Crown, from Electric, and, all the highlights of his life. And my card was the first thing they had in it.
Wow.
So I felt very flattered by that, because I think they basically think this is the real deal with it. This is the fan. This is, I think Parker did a whole bunch of stuff and started commercializing the fan clubs and mid cards and stuff later on when Elvis got big. But that's really the true deal. And actually, I sent Parker a card with his name on it, calling him the Brain. I don't know where I got it. I don't know where I got all this at 16 and 17, but it was coming from somewhere. So I went and got thousands of these cards printed up, and she did send me a picture. She did send me a small picture, and I used to could send off to picture places and get 50 pictures for like $3 or something. And, so I begged it off my mother. I got some pictures. I printed the cards, and my sisters and the other people that were helping me we answered all those hundreds of letters. So it was an instant fan club.
Wow.
Like Elvis, it's just like, he's just like a skyrocket, So long story short, that's how the beginning of that fan club started.
Okay, so you started the fan club, and you got the fan club going. Everything's running all cylinders. Now, how long before you actually met Elvis?
Okay, so within that year, within 1956, April 15th, 1956. So I was rocking and rolling with a fan club, and we were having rock and roll parties and playing Elvis music, and we were into rock and roll as well, like Little Willie John's Fever and all that. We were doing all that bopping, and I was dancing, and we were all having a rock and roll time playing the 50s, cruising and all that. This was all a real part of my life, and the fan club was just like the icing on the cake. That was all another whole thing going on. So basically, we were just, having fun, like we did. We hadn't had that much fun since, by the way, as we all know. So I got a letter from the same lady from Colonel Parker's office, and she, not knowing anything about Texas, she knew I was in Dallas. This was in Dallas, Texas. I lived in Dallas, and she says, well, the colonel wanted me to let you know that Elvis is going to be in Texas, in San Antonio, and if you would like to meet, how good is this kid? If you would like to meet him, we can arrange, he will send you a telegram, and that will get you backstage, and that you can meet him, and just let us know. And of course, the screaming, I ran into the house, mother, My mother was very supportive in all this. She loved Elvis, so boy, did that help. She was cool and just thought he was the greatest thing ever. So that really worked for me, too, because if I'd have had an alien parent, I'd have been in real big trouble. So I said, and so I wrote her back. I said, surely, yes, plus that. But it was like over 200 miles away. It wasn't just down the street, and I'm just a teenager there by myself, and I don't drive a car or anything yet. And so I happened to have a friend that had lived in San Antonio. We lived there briefly when I was growing up. I still had a longtime friend that lived down there named Tina that remained a lifelong friend. And I told Mother, I said, I could stay with Tina and her family if you just let me go. And so she agreed, and so believe it or not, I just got on the Greyhound bus and found out the sexiest dress I could find and the highest heels I could find and the most dangly earrings I could find. And I headed down the road counting every minute. And that's why my favorite song was Trying to Get to You, because I remember that as watching the pavement on the bus, it was like, I'm on my way to see Elvis Presley. We didn't call him Elvis then. And so I get there, and I go up to the front, and I take my friend Tina with me, and because she's my age, but she didn't like Elvis for some weird reason, but that's okay. She went along, and I flashed the telegram to the guy at the stage door. He, had Colonel Parker's name on it and all that. So they let me ride in. And then Tom Deskin, who was Elvis's traveling manager, stage manager, and right-hand man to Parker, I said, oh, okay, great. He said, Elvis is in that room, just go on in.
Just go on in.
Shoot. Don't say that to me, like I'm just going to go on in. I'm going to pass out here in about 2 seconds. Go, what do you mean, walk on in? And I looked at him with this incredible look. He said, yeah, just go ahead and open the door. So I opened the door, and there he is sitting in front of a mirror, and he's smoothing out the ducktails, right? He's just sitting there. And so it's just the two of us. It's his private dressing room. This is a little tiny, not big room at all. And he wheels around when he sees me walking. He sees me in the mirror walking on in, and I'm terrified. And, of course, 1,000 million times better looking in person than any picture anybody had. And I am just, my heart is beating 1,000 miles an hour, and it's the closest thing to being paralyzed
Right.
without being sick or something.
Another one of your favorite songs, Paralyzed.
Yeah, you do that very well, by the way, Peter. Peter Alden does that very well. All I could do is stand there paralyzed. And some people look at those pictures and see, it looks like, I'm very cool and collected, but no, I'm really paralyzed. People always say, how did you stay so calm with Elvis? I can tell you look real calm and at ease at home. If they only knew. It was because I was just frozen. And, he, walked to me. I said, I'm Kay Wheeler. I'm president of your fan club. That's all I could think to say. He walks up to me with these piercing blue eyes and gets as close as he can. And he says, my fan club? And then he looks me up and down and, does things that are not allowed nowadays. And says, is that all you? And I'm just ready to faint at this point. And then people come in, and Peter comes on in and starts taking the pictures. And it becomes a big, free-for-all. And so, we get, we had some private moments together that were very good. But when he was being interviewed by the press, when he said, why buy a cow when you can milk it through the fence? And I'm not making this up, okay? That's when he answered that question. He was holding me in his arms. And I completely freaked out when he said that. That was one of the, when they asked Elvis, are you ever going to get married? And, he was holding me throughout the whole press conference.
Wow.
He never let go of me. And when somebody said, you get married, he said, well, why buy a cow when you can milk it through?
Yeah.
And I thought, I will not be one of those cows.
I was just going to say, I haven't given any milk yet, so
that's not going to happen. But anyway, that was my first meeting with him, and that's when some of those great pictures that you see on the Facebook and different on the internet. That was the day. It was a real highlight day. And after that, I met him, twice in Fort Worth and Dallas, and and then in Hollywood. And then we ended up in Hollywood at the same time in '57. I don't know how that happened, but anyway. Just more of the Memphis Flash.
Yes. Well, now you were responsible for getting him one of his biggest gigs at that point.
Yeah, 1956. This was just his year. Except by the time I met him in April, Heartbreak Hotel had come out, and he had been on the stage show, the TV, the Tommy Darcy stage show, and he was skyrocketing. He was starting to skyrocket. But he was still not, a household word totally yet, And so he was still playing around Texas and in some venues that are not so great. But during that San Antonio time I had with him, which another part, we went between shows. He was doing two shows. We went to a back place where there was like an organ, like a pipe organ that you play. And he sat down and started playing songs. And so he sang Harbor Lights and some other songs for me, and then other people came in later. But I had some nice moments with him. But I said, well, when are you coming to Dallas? He says, well, the Cardinal says that we can't book Dallas. It's too big, and there's problems with it, okay? I said, well, that's not, I said, this is where your main fan club is. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of members there. And I said, you've got to come to Dallas. I said, we'll get you to Dallas. Don't worry, somehow, some way. And I'm sure he was just thinking this is just a kid talking, But as it turned out, I was able to get back to KLIF and my aunt, who was my great connection. Nothing like having a radio station behind you, baby.
Absolutely.
So I told her, I said, well, how would we ever get Elvis to Dallas? He says he can't, Parker can't get him in. She says, well, maybe if you get a big write-in get all the fans to write into the radio station. And if enough letters come in, well, we can book him if you get enough letters. So that's all I needed to be told. So I attacked it like I was a political candidate running for office and getting the letters to come in,
Right.
And so we started all writing letters. Everybody started writing, like every color of envelope, everybody started writing 10 letters each, And so they got enough letters, and so they teamed up with the State Fair of Texas to get the Cotton Bowl. They got so many letters that they knew they were going to need a big venue, and it was a time for the fair. So it kind of worked together. KLIF, along with the State Fair of Texas, sponsored Elvis to the Cotton Bowl, and he played October 11th, 1956, to 26,500 paid tickets, which was the largest paid venue for most of his career, almost 20 years, until he did some kind of New Year's Eve gig somewhere. I think it was a double concert, and they doubled up. But that held the record for like decades, at least over a decade, 15 years, of the largest paid venue that Elvis ever did. And it was all fan power, and that's what I love. It was a ground, it was the ground level kids, wanting Elvis and taking the power of the Elvis fans. We're not the Elvis Presley Enterprises, and nothing wrong with that. But we weren't the Colonel; we were the kids.
Right.
And that's nice. That's cute.
Yeah, it's impressive too.
Of course, yeah. And of course, they let me. My reward for all this was that the Colonel allowed me to be the only teenager out on the football field with Elvis. Elvis drove out on the field in his green coat and a white convertible, and there was a stage that they had just built just for the concert. And I was down there with my little $15 Brownie camera, and I was the only teenager allowed on the football field with him. The rest of they had not barbed wire, but some kind of wire fencing all across the front of the stadium, so the kids couldn't rush down on the football field. And so I thought that was my big reward in life. And then, at the press conference, my mother, who loved Elvis, painted his portrait, which hangs in Graceland today. Oh, a painting. She's an art teacher. And I got her in the press conference to meet him, and we presented the painting to him at the press conference with all the flash bulbs going off. And where are these pictures, I have to ask myself.
Wow.
I mean, all the reporters that were there, I just think there's so many missing pictures and photos that I personally saw taken of Elvis by like 10 and 15 press photographers, and there's not one of Elvis backstage in San Antonio, for example. And there was probably 10 photographers there. They were in the press conference at the Cotton Bowl. There was 100 people there, and there was so much press. The Dallas Morning News, Dallas Times Herald, various newspapers, Fort Worth Telegram, all that. They were all there, and there was not one photo of him in that press conference, except the little black and white ones I took of him.
Wow. Well, those pictures
are crazy. That's crazy.
Well, they've got to be somewhere.
Yeah. So, that was a fun thing, and that was, again, fan power. It was fan power. I like that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
All right. I forgot I was with Elvis. Speaking of another, in Shreveport at the Louisiana Hayride. Yeah, I almost forgot that one. That was the main one. Yeah, I went down there, and I think it was December 15th. With me in the 15th of 56? Was down at was December 15th, 1956 in Shreveport. It's the last Louisiana Hayride. I had an invitation to come down there, and I thought, well, could I go to Louisiana? I'm only 17, and, whatever. And I'd always lost my nerve with Elvis in a huge way. I mean, like, totally, there are no words to describe it, but all I could do was stand there paralyzed. So I thought, well, I think I'm going down to Shreveport. Oh, I think I made Rock Baby Rocket, my movie, and, by then, we shot that at the end of 1956, and I'd done a lot of television and radio things, and so I thought I had more confidence. And so I thought, I'll just bop on down. I'll bop on down to Shreveport.
Well, now, let's not gloss over Rock Baby Rocket. That was I think everybody wants to hear about that. How did that come about?
Well, the way that happened, it had nothing to do with Elvis, strangely enough. It did, they gave me a bigger part because of that, but later on. But the way it originally happened, Johnny Carroll, who was like a kind of an Elvis he loved Elvis, and he was trying to be another, an Elvis. And he, Johnny Carroll, I don't know if he's ever heard of him. From Fort Worth. And so they were playing Rock Around the Clock movie at the Palace Theater in downtown Dallas. And so they were going to have in between, intermissions and stuff, Johnny Carroll was going to play there, okay? And so we saw it in the paper, and so a friend of mine said, let's go down there. We can dance. There's going to be a rock thing. And I said, oh, okay, that sounds fun. So when Johnny Carroll started playing, I just got up and started doing, my natural bopping thing I always do at the parties and different things at my house when we'd have the Elvis parties or the rock and roll parties. It's kind of wild. Yeah, maybe. It's still kind of wild. You're still not sure how to rate it when you watch it. So I just got up there and started doing it, and so the guy just put a spotlight on me. The other kids were dancing, it wasn't just me. They all started dancing in the aisles. And so I was just dancing what I call the rock and bop. And they put a spotlight on me, and that was it. And, oh, boy, that's fun. And it was over, and thought nothing about it. Was leaving the theater. So this crazy-looking guy comes running up to me, and he said, hey. I said, what? He said, he came up to me, and this is like a classic come on that you would think. And, of course, I wasn't smart to know what a come on was anyway. But he said, we're going to be making a movie here in Dallas, a rock and roll movie with Johnny Carroll. And he said, would you possibly do that dance that you did in there for this movie? And I looked at him like, are you crazy? I mean, he was a weird-looking guy, okay? He was strange. I mean, he was like, and, of course, we're teenagers, and we don't trust anybody over 30 or even 20 maybe. So, it's like he was really batting up the wrong, walking up the wrong girl here. And he said, here's my card. Here's my card. Take this card. He said, call this number, and you can be in this movie. And, of course, I thought, that's the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. And so I go home, and I hand it to like everything, I hand it to my mother. Right. I'm my mother's daughter. And my mother was like my whole best friend forever. And she would always tell me the good and the bad and the ugly about everything. So I said, Mother, this guy came up and told me to dance. She said, oh, well, she said, I'll play that. She said, it's probably nothing. Just kind of laughed at it. So then she sees this advertisement in the Dallas. It's not an advertisement, an amusement section of the paper that says, rock and roll movie to be filmed in Dallas. Okay. And then she read it. And it said, top 10 music, which was the name of it on the card, on the wooden nickel card. And she comes running into me. My mother's always coming running into me now that I think about it, with the letters on the front porch. And now, she says, go. She says, they are making a movie. This card. It's the same people that the guy told you. She said, you ought to go over there. See, she was always there. She was my manager.
Wow.
And I said, oh, okay. So one day, I went over there to the dress on the thing, and I just walked in, and there Johnny Carroll was practicing. This horrible place. It was like red carpet, shag carpet, and all these wires and musicians and everything scary for me, for a young teenage girl. And, he was doing what I kind of thought was a bad version of Elvis. So anyway, but I don't think that now, but at the time, everything was Elvis. There was just nothing. You couldn't look at anybody but him. And so I said, oh, well, what's this? And then I found the guy I saw the guy come in that had met me, and I said, here's the card you gave me. I said, I'm Kay Wheeler. I'll do the dance if you're going to do a movie. And he said, okay, right away. So, that was all hooked up right then. And I said, and later on, I said, by the way, I have a huge Elvis Presley fan club. That might be interested in seeing this movie too, And so that's why they put it into the movie. Now the girl who's president of the largest rock and roll fan club, they added that. Yeah. And of course, I hated the movie. I was horrified at the movie. It wasn't in color. It wasn't, I'm thinking, why did I ever make this movie? It's going to haunt me for the rest of my life. I didn't think like that, but I thought, I'm going to Hollywood. I'm not going to make black and white movies like this, and it's crazy. You know, I didn't get paid for it. I bought me a Pontiac hardtop convertible with money from that. It wasn't a lot, but it was more than we had. It was my first car. So, you know, that movie was exciting, and, you know, it's turned into some kind of cult rock and roll classic, even around the world, more in, like, foreign countries in Europe, like Russia, and people that weren't in on the rock and roll of the 50s. It's kind of like it's almost a documentary, because it has actual kids doing the actual dancing, not choreographed by Hollywood. You know, when Hollywood gets a hold of it, it turns into a Broadway kind of flip-flop type thing, and it loses its real roots of the real rock and roll and the real dancing that the kids did in those days. I noticed that when I made the movie with Gene Vincent, Hot Rod Gang in Hollywood, that happened from Rock Baby Rocket. Some producers and people in Hollywood saw the Rock Baby Rocket and offered me a movie contract with American International. At that time, they made all these weird. I was a teenage werewolf and the Flying Saucer Teens, and they made they made a whole lot of Michael Landon was in a lot of their films, and they made a lot of strictly teenage movies. And they gave me a movie contract and said if I would go out to Hollywood. And then, of course, I said, Mother. I go to my mother, and she says, well, you have to be graduated from high school. You're not going anywhere without that. And so I said, so I waited. I didn't do anything. And even into the summer, you know, I still wasn't 100% sure about going out to Hollywood. And I certainly was not going to go without Mother. Okay, so that was a big deal. So we did make up our mind. We arranged to get out to Hollywood. We drove to Hollywood in that Pontiac that I bought with a Rock Baby Rock movie money. Oh, we just piled in the car. Hollywood, here we come, you know.
Okay, I'm trying to imagine what's going through your head at this time. You're, 16, 17 years old. You've met Elvis Presley. You've got a brand new car. You're in the movies now.
Hey, what are you going to do for an encore? Yeah, when I came back from Hollywood at 19, and it was like, what next?
Yeah. Well, and I was delighted to find Rock Baby Rocket on YouTube, so I'm going to include a link for anybody that's interested to watch it. It's really neat to watch.
It's so bad that it's great. The other day, a couple of years back, a theater in Oakland, California, decided to put it on the big screen. Okay.
Wow.
And have a special show, and they invited me over for a Q&A, question and answer after the movie. And it was what really stood out to me when I saw it on the big screen again. It's been very carefully preserved in black and white. It's very good condition for a film that old. And what struck me was the music. You know, the black groups. There was some, there was some Roscoe Garden, I think he is. He ended up being a big star. And the music and the pure rock and roll of it in the kids' dancing, that just came off like gangbusters, you know.
Yeah.
Like Godzilla. You're coming on like Godzilla. That's one of the lines of the movie. It really, then I think from that standpoint, and just preserving it's like a perfect time capsule almost of a lot of the real 50s teenagers on film, and they did splice in some Hollywood stuff in there. I can tell you where it is, some teenagers, but we won't even go there. But anyway, now I'm real proud of it, and I think it's cute and fun, and people seem to get a lot of fun out of it, and that makes me happy.
Yeah, very good. Well, going back to Elvis and the time that you spent with him, let everybody know, what did you think of Elvis, his music, his career, his personality, all of that stuff as a person that got to be with him and be around him in person?
Of course, like all the girls of that time, we were madly in love with Elvis. I mean, this was just like, it was as normal as apple pie and the 4th of July, for a lot of the girls. And he, of course, was immediately, I knew it was totally out of reach, and it was a joke, and he had all these beautiful girls, and, I had a good figure, but I wasn't conventionally beautiful or any of that. I'm thinking, and, So I knew better than to have any real thoughts about Elvis. You know, I knew immediately right away that wasn't going to be. I think that the original Elvis was the real Elvis throughout all his life. And I think a lot of us, you know, once we get our minds formed and we're like in our 20s and from our teens, I think we kind of who we are. We will change. Some people get bitter. They get hurt from life, etc. And changes do happen. But basically, we're always in conflict with who we really are and how we can demonstrate that, how we can live that out in our lives in a very restricted society. So I do think Elvis was the Memphis Flash. I think Elvis was the rebel without a cause. I think Elvis was Marlon Brando in The Wild One. And this was the Elvis that I saw in 1956 when he was saying, "Why buy a cow when you can go through a fence?" Now, he would never say that again past 1956.
Right. Not in public.
Let's get that right. And so he basically was the wild, he represented freedom. I mean, when you were afraid to wear different color socks to school, you had to wear white bobby socks. If you wore pink bobby socks, everybody would look at you like you're crazy. It was still very restrictive. And so Elvis comes out there in a pink jacket, you know, and wears every kind of stripe, wears his hair longer. So basically, he was rolling up his rebel flag, you know, of freedom. And I think that he had a hard time restricting the real Elvis to fit into the mold of Colonel Parker in the movies, and Parker wanted him to be acceptable, you know, and he thought that would sell more tickets, you know, for his Dancing Bear. And so I think Elvis never really, and when he would really let go in Las Vegas or whenever he was dancing for just a few minutes, we would always say, "What is that?" You know, every once in a while he'd just lean back and really dance and do what he really felt inside. And it was something from another planet almost. You went, how can he move that fast? Obviously he's got a lot inside him that's very pent up. Well, and, you know, you would see glimpses of it throughout the rest of his career. But I think also that his mother gave him affirmation and love, because that was the child that lived. You know, when he was born in tragedy, there was a dead baby next to him. Yeah. You know.
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about his mom.
And I think that the family was they were a family of faith. They sang together, they prayed together, and in their poverty and what they did have is their faith and their connection to each other. And you know, and I think we had the ultimate affirmation from his mother growing up, and nobody was ever going to come near that. I don't even think the affirmation from the fans really gave him the love that she gave somehow or another. And we've all had certain parents, and you know that the affirmation that our parents can give us can make a big difference in our life. I don't think he really ever found that in a personal relationship, maybe, and I'm just speculating, or even with us, the fans. But I think the closest he could come was when we were all screaming and saying, "We love you," and he's up on the stage. I mean, that's a lot of adoration going on there. And I think that he really kind of had to, you know, not be himself in some of these movies. Some of them were good, and some of them, but he was conforming. I guess the word I'm going for is conforming. He came out of the gate a wild bucking bronco, and by the, you know, and like they grabbed, like when Parker got him, then you know Parker starts trying to civilize him and make him not who he really was. So I think he was, and of course, you know, fame and fortune doesn't bring happiness, but I think that he was just a kid trying to please everybody, and he was a very trying to please everybody person, even with little old me. You know, when I told him I was his fan club president, at one point he said, "Well, tell me what you want me to do." And of course, when he sings that in the 1968 special, that black leather outfit on him, where he says, you know, "Baby, tell me what you want me to do." You know? I always go back to that moment. I think, oh my gosh, if I could have seen you then, you know. So I think that, you know, I think he had a lot of tragedy, and I think he had a lot of spiritual I think he obviously was a spiritual person.
Yes. Well, I know you wanted to get to that. We talked about this in our preliminary conversation. There is part of the legacy of Elvis that you wanted to share and tell us about the gospel and spiritual side of Elvis. You feel like that's more of a legacy than almost anything, the black leather and the rebellious side and all of that. Tell us about how you feel about that.
Well, I think that's a lot of the real Elvis. But Jesus was a revolutionary. He didn't say anything that anybody. He wasn't like nobody. Mm-hmm. Not that I'm comparing the two, but I'm saying that it's not necessarily a conflict with not following all the conforming to the society. Mm-hmm. To say I'm not. You can still be a rebel and not conform to society. I think that. That he always had the bedrock of what he had experienced something in those church services with his parents when he went that had something to it, because he always drew on that with his gospel songs and, including, hymns and what other artists ever put their, how great thou art in his regular, did Frank Sinatra ever do that in his nightclub shows? Elvis always wanted to make a point that he had some faith and a faith background, however derailed it might have gotten from time to time. And I think that derailment is what worried Gladys Presley. Mm-hmm. Even at the Audubon house, I mentioned that she didn't seem all that happy about everything that was going on at all. Mm-hmm. And, other people have done some research that said she was alarmed at the girls that were coming around the house, and young girls and that kind of stuff. I mean, any mother would say, the world could swallow up my son here easily, Yeah. And I think she probably is happy as she was, I guess, about the financial part of their lives being so approved. I think she was concerned about his future, and especially that's her only surviving child. And if you ever talk to anybody that's lost a child, and I know what a heartache it is. My sister lost her teenage son at 17 to leukemia.
Well,
and
Peter,
you're never the same. You're never the same. You're always hurting inside, and you go on with life because God gives you the grace to do that. But I think that Gladys Presley carried that pain with her. And I think that when she saw her surviving son in anything that looked like it might derail him or hurt him in the future, I think she was alarmed. Mm-hmm. I think she was alarmed. And I think maybe as we look back on it, rightfully so.
Yeah, and I want to get into that with you because you have an amazing insight and got to spend time with Gladys that's probably nobody else really has. Definitely that we have talked to so far.
Maybe no fan. Maybe,
yeah.
Based on some of the fan bases. Yeah.
Exactly. But before we get to that, I want to squeeze in something else because one of the first things that you and I talked about, Kay, even before Elvis, we talked about Peter Alden. And Peter Alden
Do I need to leave the room
Yeah,
now?
you need to leave the room.
No, you can stay. Please stay.
But Kay, you mentioned you wanted to share with everyone how you met Pete, what you said to him at that time, the project you guys worked on together, all that good stuff. Will you talk about that with everybody while he leaves the room? He's so embarrassed.
Well, so many people, I used to go down to Las Vegas for the Rockabilly convention. They used to have a Viva Las Vegas, or still do, once a year, and I used to do more of that than I do now. But so many people would say, well, ask me the questions just like you did. What was it like to meet Elvis the first time? What did you think? What did you say? How was this? How was it comfortable? So I thought, I think I'll just make a little CD and record it, and then I can just give somebody that, and that way they have the whole story. At least I'll get it down somewhere. Get it. And so I thought, that was my first thought. I thought I'll do something like that. That way, I was on Facebook, and the internet wasn't as big as it is, So it was like I didn't really have a way to express myself unless somebody interviewed me on a television program or something. So I decided. So we were down at Las Vegas for I think it was at was it the Lady Luck? Was it the Lady Luck? It seemed like it was the Lady Luck. Was it Elvis?
Yeah, it was.
Tribute artist convention is what it was.
Yep, down at
it was on
Fremont Street.
I was good. They'd asked me to dance. I'm in my 60s, okay, at that time. We'll never see that. We'll never see that again. You got a lot of nerve, baby. So I thought, well, you know, I'll see these Elvis. And the first thing, my sister, my mother passed away, and so the next one I go to is my sister, right next to me, and I say, you know, if I do a CD, I like to have some music behind it, so it kind of represent the different times I met him, which was all of 1956, except for 57 at Jailhouse Rock in Hollywood. And so I said, well, we can't use Elvis's music. That would cost $1 million, $10 million. And so I thought, well, maybe we'll see what's here at this convention, and maybe there'll be some music we can use on the CD. So, you know, and then when I heard Peter, he did the 50s. Not all of them were doing the Las Vegas mostly, because that was, of course, he had more exposure in his Las Vegas career than he did in the 50s in the main media for the you know, as time progressed. Mm-hmm. And Peter was doing the Elvis 50s, you know, with a pink shirt on and all that, and the black coat, and he seemed to have the mood and the feeling of Elvis, you know, better than anybody that I had seen. And so I asked him at that time, I said, if I do a CD, will you let me use some of your music? And, you know, we went back and forth, and I think Peter Alden did the best 50s Elvis of anybody I've heard.
I love it. I'm going to start putting that on all the literature.
Yeah, and believe me, I was there, and I used it, and then EPE thought I'd actually used Elvis Presley's music, and they sent me a letter and said, you can't use Elvis Presley's music on your CD. Of course, this was somebody that was a pretty square probably, but, you know, I called him up. I said, that's not Elvis Presley's music, please. And I said, but thank you for the compliment. That's a nice thing to say anyway. Yeah. So I'll let you know that happened. So and I think I was right about that. I think, and I also think that, you know, some people have the thing, oh, well, you know, there'll never be an Elvis, and, you know, people that are doing what Elvis did, you know, tribute artists or whatever you want to call them, you know, there's nothing like Elvis. Well, everybody knows there's nothing like Elvis. That's like saying, you know, there's nothing like air. You know, we all know that. But I think that he would just totally flip if he could see how many people are remembering him by his music, by singing like he does, and capturing his look and feel. I think he would be so. And they didn't do that for like Valentino. They didn't do that for Frank Sinatra. They only did it for Elvis. You know, Elvis is just a groundbreaker. And who could imagine that there would be all these? I went to that convention and there was all these Elvises. I mean, what a dream! How could you get? Does it get any better? I mean, does it get any better for anybody who really loves Elvis? And anybody that really loves Elvis likes Elvis any way you can get him. Yes, you know, on a T-shirt, on a coffee cup, and most of all, live, somebody up there dancing and singing. In fact, at our Elvis clubs, we would get up and try to dance like Elvis, and we would. My sister, she would imitate Elvis, and we would all scream. So this has been going on from day one with Elvis Presley. Well, if you can't get him, if we can't bring him back from the dead, well, at least we can go see a tribute artist do some wonderful songs and dances and make us feel like we were at Elvis concert. That's as close as you guys are ever going to get, because he's not here anymore. So that's what I have to say about it. I'd say I wish every guy went around acting like Elvis. That would make my life happier than I could ever tell you.
Well, and you have a great story.
Even at this age, it would still make me happy.
Yes. Well, you have a great story about Elvis hearing sort of a tribute, and you were there, and you saw his reaction. Will you tell that story?
No, I took a picture of a girl, actually, doing an Elvis imitation. There's nothing wrong with that word for me, but anyway, some people like it. And I showed it to him once. I think it was in Fort Worth. And I said, this is the girl, and she's doing an imitation of you. And he grabbed it. It was an 8x10 picture. He grabbed it. He said, man, he was like going crazy. I thought he took it out of my hand, grabbed it out of my hand. And he called Scotty over there. He said, come here, look at this. He said, this is somebody doing an imitation of me. He thought it was the most fabulous thing he'd ever seen. He said, can I have this? I said, yeah. I said, sure. And so he takes it and sticks it in the top of that leather guitar case up in the top part. Somehow or another, he could poke it in something to get to stay. So I don't think he was mad, but he was thrilled to death about it.
Aww.
It was a highlight. I'll never forget it. And whoever thought, I mean, I saw that was in 1956. I think it was in April, right after the San Antonio. He invited me to come to the Fort Worth after the San Antonio meeting. And it was it's in that same month. And so for anybody, the naysayers, I don't think Elvis would be mad at all. I think he would be smiling from ear to ear.
I love that story. And you got another great story, so I promised everybody we'd get to this part. So exciting. You got to spend about 6 hours with Gladys Presley, Elvis's mom. So will you tell everybody, how did that happen? And take us through that day with you.
Yeah, it was unplanned. I had to be in Memphis to do a photo shoot with Barbara Hearn and 16 magazine. And in fact, I had the magazine. They took a spread of pictures with it, and so the opportunity came to go see Gladys Presley. And the conversation, somebody said, I don't know whether it was the photographer, the editor, the guy doing the story, or who had happened, said, I can hook you up to go see. We didn't say hook you up. If you want to meet Gladys Presley, we can, work something out while you're here. I might have said it was just, I might have said, I'm just going to go by the house, and, and they might have said, well, we can arrange it. Something was arranged. And she knew who I was because my mother's portrait that mother had painted Elvis was hanging in the living room. And
is that the one? I hate to interrupt you, but I gotta know. Now, the picture that you're talking about, is that the one that's over the staircase at Graceland?
No, it's in the room. It's in the port. It's right when you're leaving Graceland, and there's a portrait of Gladys Presley, and the one next to it is the one my mother painted. The little gold thing from a Dallas fan club, a national fan club, is right there on the painting at the bottom. It's still there. It's still there.
Okay, great. Thanks for clearing that up. Yeah, now we'll know when we go. Okay.
And actually, the interesting little side note here is that portrait looks an awful lot like Lisa Marie Presley, more than Elvis.
Wow.
It's startling that my mother, or when my mother painted it, I said, well, Mother, that's not a general picture that you see Elvis. If it wasn't a straight front look, the most, that she caught something else in Elvis that, in fact, I wasn't even sure that I liked it, okay? I liked it, but it didn't look exactly like Elvis, And now that I look at it, it's pretty amazing how much it looks like Lisa Marie Presley. It's totally amazing. So my mother saw something in Elvis, I guess, that we didn't, that I couldn't see. But
yeah, I'll have to include that.
So long story short, it was she knew I was coming, but it was just spontaneous. It was and so I just knocked on the door at Audubon, and she opened the door, and she was like the nicest, just like family. I mean, she treated me just like she was my auntie, or of course the Southern people are awfully sweet like that. That's just the way they're personable generally. And she was just real open and invited me in, and was gracious, and thanking me for all I'd done for Elvis and all that. She took me to the whole house and with a private, personal tour, and we talked, and she wanted to fix me lunch and different things like that. And so, it was just a remarkable thing. She let me go through everything in his closet, and and his cars and motorcycles and everything. And so we got some photos. It was just an overall pretty thing. But the last thing she mentioned to me was, she said, she said, you really remind me of myself when I was young.
Wow.
And she even mentioned something about wanting to be a dancer. Vaguely it comes back to me. I said, oh, really? I dance some, And she said, do you really think Elvis does drugs? This was in 1956. It's in November, okay? And this was way back then. She was already concerned. And she said some of these magazines and things, they write and say that Elvis does drugs and things like that. And she looked at me really intense. She said, like I was going to know something. She says, he doesn't really do drugs. Elvis doesn't do drugs. And I said, we can't pay attention to what people write.
Right.
But I think she was concerned right out of, as we say in Texas, the get-go there.
Wow.
I could see the concern on her face. But she, Verna was there. He was obsessed with a swimming pool. He was, there's a crack in the swimming pool because they had filled it up with water too soon before the cement got really cured, as they say, and it caused a crack. And he was there with all the workmen, and they were all, I just met him in passing, hello, Mrs. Presley, but, he wasn't in the house. And she didn't seem a real happy person. The word for her is unhappy. That would be what I would get. But, people talk about, I didn't see any evidence of any kind of drinking or smell anything. And, my dad was a big drinker, and I'm big on knowing how alcohol smells, okay? Or grew up with it.
Yeah.
And there wasn't, a lot of people say things like, I've heard different rumors and stuff like that, but from what my experience was, and those hours that I spent with him, I didn't smell anything or even hint of anything or see a bottle of anything anywhere in the house. So for whatever that's worth. And she was just great. She just, the gold records were sitting there in a big stack, and I just started picking them up. And, of course, I can talk forever, so as you're catching on here. But, she and I, we just got in conversation after conversation after conversation. We talked about the oil painting, who it looked like, what she thought of it, so forth and so on, what I thought of Elvis. The dog. She had her little sweet pea with her. We were just like, it was just like I was visiting my auntie, and we were just sitting, it was a feeling of family. I can say that, a real true warm feeling of family, and I'll never forget that. And I'm so glad that Elvis was on tour, because otherwise I'd have never got that opportunity with her.
Yeah.
It's a very...
I always lose my nerve with Elvis. So if that wouldn't have been any good, I'd probably flown in there and flown out of there for like 15 seconds.
You're right.
So.
Well, hey,
excuse me. I know what to run from.
Well, it's such a unique experience that very few fans had the chance to do to really just get to know her.
Well, maybe I did it for a lot of the fans. This is good because it is a fan story. It's not a Colonel Parker story. It's not a girlfriend story. A lot of people say girlfriend because he's loving up on me and all that. And of course, I would love to be the girlfriend, but I never played that role. I never played that role with Elvis. I had some moments with him, a date with him in Shreveport.
He had a picture of you, right?
He had
a picture of you, right?
Yeah, he had a picture of me on his nightstand.
Can you imagine?
Listen to this line. I wasn't a one-night stand. I was a nightstand.
She was on the nightstand.
I was actually a nightstand. I thought that was funny because one of my lines is, I was never going to be a one-night stand, And I was playing for keeps with him, man. I wasn't messing around with. He was like a keeper in a real big way. But, I wasn't about to be one of those.
Yeah.
Now,
one of those guys. That wasn't going to happen. Even if I have to be the only one that's happened to got away, at least I set out in his mind for something.
Right, so, right. Well, good for you.
I regret it like 3 times a week.
Hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah, but no, I'm glad. No, whatever it is, I'm glad. It's okay. It's okay. And because there's nothing like an unfinished story, is there?
I've got a quick question. As long as we're on the subject of Gladys, and I don't know that anybody's asked her if they have. I've never seen it. Did she have any songs of his that she just really adored?
We did not talk about that. I don't know. I can't answer. No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of. I think they probably like the country and western side of more, like Trying to Get to You, Milk Cow Blues, Boogie, that kind. I think Vernon likes Trying to Get to You is his favorite. What's his favorite song?
Okay.
So I think that probably the more country and western and gospel than the show tunes like he did in Vegas and some of the tunes like Bridge Over Troubled Water, which are really unbelievable, but they're not the roots tunes, the Elvis roots tunes, of the gospel and the country and western where he sprang out of the original stuff. But that's just a guess. That's just a guess. But I think that the main thing that you could see that having a mother like that with that adoration and all that, I know you never really get it that much from anybody ever again, and you're lucky if you get it from one. Mm-hmm. If you're lucky, count yourself lucky. But you're never going to go searching probably and find anything comparable with the kind of just unconditional love, that Gladys had for him as her son, and now that I have a son, I understand that totally. And of course, when my son started talking about going into rock and roll music, I started having a heart attack. I thought, oh no, this cannot happen. So,
you totally
because
get
what
it
happened to Elvis.
Yeah.
I and he kind of holds that against me to this minute, but for just a moment, I could feel a little bit of the anxiety and the concern. You don't want your kid to get in something that's not going to be really good for him or kill him,
Right.
At the end of the day. So.
Yeah, so what's your life like now, Kay? You mentioned you have a son, and I understand you're in real estate. What if I want to buy a house in California? How do I find Kay Wheeler?
Well, I mean, just pull up Google, and there's like about 4 pages, and hidden among there somewhere it says Kay Wheeler Realtor. And you just click that, and my son's with me with a Wheeler team. We're at Century 21. We were at Century 21 for 26 years.
Wow.
And we got really blessed here in real estate in San Jose, California. My daughter, Anna, I have a beautiful daughter, Anna, and she's also in real estate. So we just have our life here. I work on books. I'm working on several gospel books, compilations of the scriptures. I've done some of these before for Thomas Nelson Publishing. They've been distributed, 11 million copies sold.
Wow.
Around the world. And of course I didn't get those royalties, so don't get excited here. But I did them for like a flat fee type of thing. But the royalties, I was supposed to have gotten more, but it's a long story, never mind. But anyway, I'm working on several of those, and I'd like to get those finished before I leave this planet. And they're big tasks, they're big projects.
Yeah.
And of course, I would just love to someday see the Elvis story and the fan club and the Rock Baby Rocket and all the fun things, and even the Gene Vincent and Eddie Cochran and all the people that I met in Hollywood. A good rock and roll, American Graffiti rock and roll style with music and Elvis and all my story. I'd like to see it done in a film. I think it would be fun. And I think it would be positive. I'd like to see that happen maybe before I leave, because I especially want to be sure the dancing's right.
You gotta choreograph that thing.
I want to live long enough to be sure I get the dancing right in it.
Would we shoot it in color or in black and white, Kay?
Well, I think we can go color. And now that we've mentioned it, we cannot put that brown tint on the screen to try to make it look like an antique table. What is it? In the 1950s, color was brighter. There was no pollution. Everything was Technicolor. Elvis was Technicolor. Everything that was happening was bright. And when they do these nostalgia films, even when they did the Frankie Valli one, as great as I love these shows, I can't stand it when they put the beige tint on the film. It's called an antiquing or something that they do on it. They didn't do it in the Johnny Cash story, which was great, and they didn't do it in the Ray Charles story, but they kind of used that to try to age it, and they even did it on the television special that they did, the Sun Records thing. You don't have to do, if you can't get your set decorators and your costuming enough to bring people into that time frame, then don't just spray brown on the film and think you're going to antique the story.
Right.
I would have to say that, and that's not on topic, but that drives me wild. Yeah, I want to live long enough to keep that from happening.
Well, Kay, we certainly appreciate all your time. Getting a chance to get another unique. We're enjoying these interviews because we're getting a lot of different and unique memories of Elvis that you don't get in the books or in the official storyline. Just getting a chance to talk to real people that knew him, and it's just amazing how when we first started doing these, we thought, well, we got to come up with like all these questions, and thankfully, everyone that's known him is just. As soon as you start asking about Elvis Presley, the stories just come out, and it's amazing to us that we only have like 2 or 3 questions. We're like, oh my gosh, these people better talk. Well,
you just have such an amazing, beautiful, unique perspective, being there right in the beginning, spending so much time with this mom, and we just feel so blessed and so lucky to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for your time and sharing with us.
I would never believe after all these years that I would still be talking about Elvis. But yeah. What a great topic. And
yes.
You just all of a sudden you feel about 20 years younger when you start talking about it. So it's my pleasure, actually. My pleasure.
Well,
thank you so much,
We appreciate
Kay.
it very much, Kay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. Blessings.